harnessing data analytics, unleashing insights for informed decision-making in the food supply chain. And for that, I would like to invite to the stage in just 1 minute our panelist, Prateek Srivastva, Vice President Cropin Technology Solutions, Ilana Ryder Schnytzer, Director of Product Marketing Tastewise Technologies, Nadim El Khazen, Partner, Peakbridge VC, and panel discussion moderators, Zbigniew Lewicki, Chief RDQ Officer, Nomad Foods. Please give them a warm welcome. I hope my pronunciation was quite okay. Hello. You have your. Do we have one more microphone, or our panelists will share? I hope you can share. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well managed. We will manage the mics for sure, and great to be here with you just before lunch. Definitely the best pronunciation of my name today. So congratulations. But on a serious note, we'll start with a little bit of introduction, which hopefully is really fascinating topic. Zibi Lewicki, as mentioned, I'm a nomad of food system, 27 years across the world in different parts of Unilever, Nomad, Pepsi, Lipton joint venture, in different vertically integrated business model. And my personal purpose and passion is to create delicious world of well-being, and delicious because the great food win the hearts and minds of our consumers. Only that way we can really create scale and drive impact. And Bites is the theme from Peakbridge, which is one of our panelists, because actually data and data connectivity is the largest by far factor which can accelerate transition of the food system. Food system which is 9 trillion in value, and actually when we think about an impact element of the food system, we have 14.7 billion tons of carbon dioxide emission. It could be seen as a problem. It could be seen as new economy. So if we convert it into value, it's another trillion of value, but the only way to tap into this value is by understanding the data and connecting the data. So we had a really fascinating crew here because Tastewise bring AI to consumer data and trends. Cropin is really a system game-changing player in connecting the data from the farms and really helping decision making. Peakbridge actually create the bridge with financial institutions and bring the funding to impact organization. And for myself, Nomad Foods is the largest ultra-fresh foods company. I call it frozen food as ultra-fresh foods. And one cool fact is 100 years ago, Clarence Birdseye invented the category by inventing flash freezing. But since 100 years, no one asked the question why all the frozen food is in minus 18 degrees. And the answer is, there is no answer, because it was simply a conversion from 0 Fahrenheit 100 years ago till now. And as Nomad Foods, we lead the transformation to minus 15 degrees, which saves the world emissions of Kenya. And this is only possible by science and data. So this was a little bit of an appetizer, but we will just go through a brief introduction and maybe more cool facts from the panel before we actually get into questions.
Hi, thanks Zibi for the introduction. I'm Nadim, partner at Peakbridge. Peakbridge is an agri-food tech focused VC and growth fund. We invest predominantly from seed to Series B in B2B proprietary technologies across 5 verticals: ingredients, alternative proteins, nutrition and health, new farming systems, and the 5th one is digitalization, which includes SaaS models, AI, and machine learning applied to the food supply chain.
Excellent.
Okay,
Ilana?
so hi, I'm Ilana. I work for Tastewise. Tastewise, we work, basically our view is that consumer is in the center of everything that is happening in the food and beverage world, where it goes all the way from supply chain and onwards. And sort of fun fact is that when I originally joined the food industry, I joined in a CPG company, and someone had said to me, no matter what you've done, you made a great choice because people always need to eat. So everyone sitting in this room knows that there is a future for the industry of food. The question is what they eat, how they eat, when they'll eat, that's beyond. But people will always be eating, so that's a good thing. And yeah, happy to be here today.
Everyone, my name is Prateek. I'm part of Cropin. Cropin is one of the world's largest agri-tech platforms. We compute over 10% of world's croppable land across 103 countries. We've been around for 14 years and largely work with companies in the CPG, seed crop protection space globally. That's a quick introduction. Fun fact about me. I started my career as a programmer, and I used to make screensavers for PC Quest and PC magazines when the world had more CRT monitors, right? So that was way back in 2002, but that's the fun fact. But over to you.
So already enjoyed this bunch today, but can you imagine if we expand this conversation into the food system with all the players representing different verticals, what could happen? But serious stuff now, so asking the questions maybe first, starting with Ilana, how are growing consumer demands and the kind of environmental consideration of consumers or how they could be used to inform decisions by CPG retailer companies in terms of make, packaging, other implications? What's your perspective on that?
So again, from the consumer-centric aspect, when we come and we say that consumers are in the center, we mean that in all aspects. The easiest is obviously looking at flavors, ingredients, and products, but environmental aspects have a lot. We see the consumers see the manufacturers as the ones responsible. They take responsibility for what they are producing. So it's not just what I'm buying, what I'm eating, but who am I purchasing this from, and how are they working in order to provide a better, better view, let's say even environmentally on the world. And we can see that because the products they choose come from that area. So if, for example, I'd be looking at that aspect from a consumer view given 2024, if we look at aspects, for example, like organic or animal rights, you would see these in decline, actually. Not that they are not important, but in the way that people are discussing this is seeing a little bit less in terms of that. However, things like local produce, food waste, sustainabilities, these are all topics that are actually in increase. And how this affects companies is because really when they're looking around where they're improving beyond the impact it has on the world, which is obviously beyond that, there's still companies who are there to make money. And the way to make money is to give audiences also what they want. And if you can do both together, that's great. So the ability to sort of combine what consumers are looking for within the responsibility that you have, but aiming in the right direction, as we see, definitely influences how this affects supply chains.
And what's your trick as Tastewise? How do you help with that?
Our trick is AI. It's no secret, but really AI is the enabler for us to really overview the large amounts of data, because the fun of the business is that people just tell us what they do, right? We don't have to go really far. All you have to do is click on your Instagram or your LinkedIn or Pinterest or whatever, and you'll see what people's ideas and thoughts are. But how you gather this into insightful, actionable items is where AI comes in, because that's when we have to take all of this big data and analyze it and see which is rising, which is declining, to make sure everything is really food and beverage related, and to make sure that when we work together with companies, and these are very big companies that their decisions do impact a global level, and we see that really everywhere, that they are aiming their decisions towards the right direction, and this is looking at their short-term plans of 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. So it's definitely the enabler for us to provide this information to these huge companies and be part of their responsibility in this topic.
Great stuff. And for the audience, not to distract you, you can check Taste GPT online and find out more. But sure. Now moving all the way upstream, you can choose the place in the world where you take us with the next question, which is, could you share examples how AI, ML, intelligence helps optimize resource allocation at the farm level upstream, and how you can use it also in terms of the climate changes and all the impacts that need to be navigated these days?
Yeah, I think I'll probably add some elements on what we do at a regional level, maybe give you an example of what we do with the scope that we operate in. So let me take you to Africa, right? For example, maize as a crop value chain is consumed by 70% of people in Kenya, right? That's an important crop value chain. And if there is any change to that production, right, it leads to probably an impact of $300 to $500 million in an import bill, right? So it's a huge and extremely important crop value chain for an entire country's survival. With the volatility in climate, right, it's very important for the government to understand what is the country producing and why it is producing. If there is a change in temperature, what are the trends that are doing? With AI and ML, we've been able to sort of map all of this, contextualize to not just a crop, but also at a variety level, and help governments, for example, understand decisions around warehousing, around supply chain, or importing crops in advance, and some of those, right? So that's one example, and it's the same applicability to even retailers, right? We know what happened in UK in tomatoes, right, last year, right? Some of those visibility forecasts is important for retailers as well. So we can combine what we have built around crop knowledge graphs at Cropin, and then combine that with what we can see it sort of as a forecast for weather, and then bring out far more visibility and predictability.
Thank you. I didn't think about using AI to find tomatoes last year, but it would have been really handy. Now, we have been with consumers and Taste GPD. We were upstream in Africa. Let's go into the future. So, Nadim, in your perspective, the next 5 years, if you think about the next 5 years and the changes, how AI will be molding the future of food system?
That's a triggering question, but thank you very much for it. I'll try to answer it as much as I can. So, look, we as investors, we do think that the food industry, while being the largest one, is the least digitized still. If you compare it to mobility, if you compare it to energy transition, if you compare it even to real estate, right? So there is a huge opportunity there. We have seen really breakthrough technologies at the farm level, at the crop monitoring, leveraging data from weather forecasts, from satellite imaging, using hardware, etc. We see that this space is now becoming, has emerged in a sense. Some companies are now attracting the later stage growth and private equity funding. Downstream, we are seeing, very interesting technologies like Tastewise, who is one of our portfolio companies actually. If you come and see me at the last of the panel, I can give you 50% discount on the next taste. But where we see a lot of value is actually in the middle of the value chain, which is still untapped, around food waste reduction. Whether it's at the supermarket level, whether it's at the food processing level, whether it's at the harvesting level. This is a huge game changer. 1/3 of the food that we consume is wasted. And the largest buckets actually sit at the farm level, but also very much downstream. And finally, we see also game-changing technologies using AI and software in general around food safety. We see that millions of tons of foods are being reclaimed every year because it's not because companies like Nestle or Danone don't know what's going on in the factory. They know that this batch, for example, has been contaminated. It's just that they were not able to act quick enough and put the right team to address it. So this is one last vertical where we see interesting technologies emerging.
So yeah, having worked over 26 years in R&D and quality and sustainability, actually this type of minority report for quality incidents, predicting the risks and preventing the risk before it happens would be a massive win. And moving then to the next question, which starts with consumer, because we are seeing much more unique demands. There is personalized nutrition, there is unique expectations in terms of benefits. How AI at the consumer level can help FMCG companies, retailers to navigate all this complexity, how to help with decisions. Ilana?
So it is true that customers are getting a lot more specific in their needs. I mentioned this before, if once upon a time really a topic, for example, like health or protein was something we'd see on a very high level. the level of specification and detailing and the needs that people have. And we see this coming in a lot with Gen Z, which is a lot of a high interest for CPG companies as the new generation entering as a consumer, maybe on a consumer level, a lot of personalization. So on the one hand, there are companies you can come and say, well, I can make endless amount of SKUs, right? I can do, from maybe 10 portfolio of, teas that I offer for my customers, I can add more flavors and more ingredients and more capabilities and help them with, insomnia and help them with gut health and bring more things into women's health. And I can really expand. But at the same time, we all know that SKUs and operational aspects and supplies and even, inventory, all of these procurement, everything that goes around adding a single SKU to these companies is enormous. As enormous as you say, both on an operational level and an environmental level, because once these things, by the way, don't sell, they need to be somehow destroyed, which is, again, another implication for any food. We always look at sort of fruits and vegetables, but no one sees sometimes all of the packaged goods that expire and need to be taken off the shelves. So the way that you manage to use AI in that way to really sort of maybe I would say predict, but let's say take more calculated risks or thought out sort of thoughts on what you're going to do, what are your trends are sort of huge. And I like giving an example because sometimes numbers or sort of real examples help resonate. We all know that high proteins is growing, right? Does anyone, by the way, know how much protein is a discussion? I mean, looking outside, you can probably take an example, but protein example, when we look at 2 years of discussions, is around 60% growth, which is an incredible amount of people think about it, really discussing it. We see double the amounts around influencers, around foodies, around people that are really specifics, in foods, but we also see this coming from would say the general audiences. And when we look inside, we can really see that we try to see what sort of products are led by protein, because we can look at it from every which direction. And this is not to look, by the way, at the alternatives, which is a whole other segment. When we look at dairy, just as a category, we can break it down to different areas. So here, for example, we see protein growing up very much in yogurts, which is around a 20%, and cottage cheese, which we had seen a growth of over 160%. Cottage cheese. And so when we look into that, we say, okay, so if we're a company, for example, looking to invest into a higher protein product, we could either go to multiple dairy ones, or let's focus maybe on this area on cottage cheese where we're seeing demand. By the way, cottage cheese specifically, we're also seeing home cooking, which is the most interesting panel because what people are doing in their homes themselves. So you can only see that when they tell you what they're doing. And then, for example, there, what would they do? We see a lot of increase in desserts, for some reason. So how does this help a CPG company? So it takes their idea from looking at a protein level, okay, and maybe looking for where they will do it, and helping them focus on what line, what category, what area would they like to focus this in. It can be as an initial strategy, it can be as an ongoing one. And the idea of that is that they're not making this assumption based only on, for example, sales data, which won't show them these numbers because they're not yet at a market level in the supermarket. It will show them this from what people are demanding and wanting. And it will help direct them to the area of where they should lead their innovation. Where will they take this high-level great idea and then navigate, like we said, everything else. Their production, their manufacturing, their supply chain, everything they do along the way, help them. By the way, also at the same time, helping them with retailers, because retailers are a big stop when it comes to going into the food and beverage. You can't enter the market without them. And when you want to buy your space in the category, you need to justify why. So it gives them that area of not only helping them on that area, it also helps the supermarkets and other retailers that are also managing this aspect of what they're doing. So it's sort of a win because they also want to minimize, where their warehousing and expenses. So when we look and when we base decisions on a consumer-centric level, and we say this always, you are definitely going to gain always a lot more than as a standalone.
Yeah. So now something completely different, but connected. So going back to upstream and this fact that 14.7 billion CO2 emissions happen related to the food system, those are avoidable. But we know that around 4 to 6% of the data that surrounds the emissions is of high quality and the primary data. So imagine the kind of vacuum and the lack of connectivity that we have, and Cropin is trying to solve some of these problems. So maybe if you could expand on the role of data intelligence, whether it is carbon or any other data, more at the farm level, and how this data can help create the value within the value chain overall.
So, I mean, digitization was mentioned just before, right? I think it's a huge challenge, right? If you look at, you know, agri-tech it's been around for what, 20 years, more or less, right? In different shapes or form. We've been around for 14 years, so that's a long time. And in spite of all of that has happened, I think if you look at pure digitization percentage of the world, I think we would probably have digitized 15% at a farm level. I don't think so the world is digitized anything more than that. Which goes to say that digitizing is hard, and it's only by digitizing do you get data, right? So the reality is after 20 years and maybe, I don't know, $20 billion spent across multiple companies funded in different categories, we still at 15%. So there is still a lot of room to grow, right? For us, digitizing becomes, right, the bed on which you can base decisions, whether it is regional, climate smart advisory, or supply chain, or traceability, anything, right? Digitization is the first lever on which you have to base all of these decisions on, right? But whatever we have today is also becoming richer. So because you have multiple seasons that you've had of what you've had, you are able to now make it far more intelligent. So at Cropin, we work at a variety level. So we have over 11,500 crop varieties in our sort of knowledge graph. And then now we are able to use that and combine that with forward-looking, whether it is from NOAA or ECMWF, and then sort of create our own unique models to say with that, what is the possible crop that you can grow at a particular geography, for example, in 2-3 years, right? Because the supply chains will be different than what it is today, right? Given all the changes that you have in climate. So the advantage that we have is whatever that we've collected, we can build on top of it, use, and even the data inputs are getting better, right? I think a lot of companies are trying to build AI on top of weather. So that makes it far more intelligent than what we've been consuming so far. A lot of us are starting to use SAR imagery, which sort of allows us to sort of get over issues of cloud cover, for example, in remote sensing, right? So some of those infrastructure-led sort of intelligence also allowing us to get better and be more precise on outcomes like food security, around understanding what is crop suitability going to be for this region, right? Even in lending, right? Financial services is a huge outcome that agri-tech is sort of having a segue in. How do you do better lending for farmers and make sort of it, people more self-reliant, give access to subsidies and so on and so forth. So that's my take.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Nadim, you have already answered a little bit of perspective on the investment areas in venture capital and digital. So I will try to move the next questions slightly further. What were the biggest aha moments for you? So if you think about digital space, and this is actually the series, it's around for everyone in the panel to share an aha moment. It's a spontaneous kind of reflection, but starting from you, what were the biggest aha moments for you so far when it comes to impact investing in digital and data in the food system?
Yeah, maybe I can share two of those. So we have invested in Tastewise actually in 2019, which was our second investment. And when the Gen AI and ChatGPT basically came to the market, as investors, we are very, stressed investors and panicky investors, right? So we were, saying, is this going to kill, Tastewise, or is this going to enable Tastewise? And actually, since that trend, it was a bit of an aha moment where actually it has enabled and taken Tastewise, to a next level of revenues, of unlocking sort of larger accounts, signing nationwide accounts. So I would say this was the very first one. The second one is around when we see the pharma industry coming now to the personalized nutrition space that we discussed earlier, where we wouldn't have seen such partnerships between platforms that provide personalized nutrition insights for people with particular indications or diseases. If I give an example, we invested in a German company called Una Health that provides personalized nutrition recommendations for type 2 diabetes patients. The first aha moment there was when they got approval from the German health authorities to become fully reimbursed. And the second one is when a large pharma company like Abbott, who's the world leader in providing diabetes patches, approached them for a global rollout of the Una Health solution along-wise the Abbott sort of therapies. So we are seeing a lot of changes there. These are two examples I wanted to share.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'll have to go along, but I agree. I think that generative AI and the massive change it gave to the accessibility that everyone, AI was no longer this like thought of concept, and I also remember, talking to sort of potential prospects and we were saying AI and they were sort of feeling like it's beyond them, or they don't really connect to the term, what does it mean? And generative AI in that sort of one spike of end of 22, beginning of 23, and the way ChatGPT came out, I think altogether really sort of put AI on the map as the future, as every household name. And I think that when we look, like we said, on our product, it made us realize, okay, we have so much data, we have so much to give. How, but people sometimes don't know what to ask or how to get the information out of it because there's so much of it, right? And, they'll come to us and they'll say, at the end of the day, we want to know, which direction should we take? What cheese should we launch? Where should we invest our money? Like they're asking these questions and then sort of we're handing this massive amount of data and sort of saying, look. And I think the generative AI really gave us that tool. And like we said, by integrating that, we have the data. So we knew that we have the best data. We knew that we, by far managed to cover the food and beverage worlds, that by far we know exactly what the food people are speaking. But this is the way to really approach it to anyone. So TasteGPT, for example, which is our internal ChatGPT, enables you to do just that. You'll write, hey, what is trending right now in cheese? And just like that, tick, 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 there's your answer. And I think that when we're looking at all of the tools we're providing, it's beyond just, product releases, it's content creation, it's, marketing contact, it's positioning, it's finding new demand opportunities ongoing. So it's really a great world and beyond that data can be used by CPG companies that was mentioned here before. I think, you said it as well. It's such a slow penetration to an industry which is more slow moving, that, you need to sort of give them that sort of time to integrate it, that things don't move as quickly as, tech. But I think that generative aspect really gives them that, aha, I can really see what it does for me now. I can see how on a daily basis I'm going to use this. And that for us was a moment of saying, right, all we need to do is to, get them to ask the question, how do we serve the data much better? And, that is the difference. That what will make us sort of that place of the go-to for any question, any answer, which is the base. So definitely around that development.
All right, and Prateek, your aha moments.
Yeah, I'll have to go with what these guys say, right? For us, actually two points that I would like to make. One, obviously generative AI created a lot of opportunity. For us, different outcomes. So when you work in the enterprise space, the adoption of the platform, especially in the agri-tech ecosystem, is very, very painful, right? Because you give them a new system, it's another system. You talk to any enterprise who's in the agribusiness, say, oh, another system, right? We already have 45 of those, right? And you cannot be another system. How do I know which plot in which geography had what water stress, right? Imagine just being able to understand information or outcomes of your own assets. It would probably take 40 hours of training by someone at Cropin, and then 40 hours of contribution from, let's say, someone at Nestle, and then committing to the whole system to be able to get that answer. Now, what has happened now with ChatGPT and similar AI platform is essentially it allows you to interact with the system in a far more comfortable fashion. Now you're going to just simply ask a question. Tell me where the water stress was in 2009 and 2020, and zip, you get like an NDVI image, you get weather outcomes, you can download a CSV, and then you're good to go, right? Imagine that activity would have taken, I don't know, 150 hours of total training, usage, etc., and still a lot of friction, right? So for us, it's removed the friction completely, right? So one, it's enabled that, it's removed the friction completely. And I think on the other side, because we're an enterprise company, I think with the capital slowing down in agri-tech, that's also actually created a lot of opportunities for us, right? Because what has happened is when the capital was free flowing, everyone was doing everything, right? I think people have burned enough capital. I think there is now wisdom that not everyone can do everything. So that's the second sort of thing that we've seen, that now companies are saying, hey, listen, I'm a seeds company, right? Why don't I just produce seeds and not make technology, right? I've burned $100 million, right? So maybe you guys do parts of it, right? I'm a retailer. I'm supposed to just retail and not supposed to build technology systems for supply chain traceability. Why don't someone else do that? Even at our level, we are saying, oh, we don't do everything, by the way, right? Can someone do traceability better? Can someone do digitization better? And we'll plug in, right? So I think that stress of capital not being there has removed the distraction from the entire ecosystem, has made all of us much more wiser, I would say. So yeah, two key moments.
If I can quickly jump on that, very interesting point, because as investors, we see that as well. And we also saw that a lot of companies were developing also the same things or adjacent solutions and talking to the same people. And now that capital is not as abundant, we do see consolidation opportunities. We do see opportunities to roll up some of these technologies to create the new Bloomberg of AgTech, where you can harness weather data, satellite imaging, what's going on the field, but also what's going on further downstream. And we think that today the time is right to take some of these verticals and perhaps consolidate them together, which would make a lot of sense.
So I will just wrap up with one aha moment, which is, if you think about even this conference, you look at science and technology, it's incredible. So that means that future is already here, but it's not equally distributed. And the only way, or the main way, to accelerate the future into today is by intelligent data use for quicker decisions and learning, accelerating the overall transition. One example of many in my career was actually applying Internet of Tea, which was an intelligent platform co-developed with Microsoft Cranfield University, Capgemini, and Unilever, and actually applying this in the tea estates and accelerating the yields and efficiency of agriculture, winning something that was achieved in the 10 years within 3 to 5 months period. And that shows that the moment you plug in science and data and you combine this, you can achieve incredible things. And I hope that this panel also demonstrates actually building and bringing 4 different parts of the system. And when we start talking, we discover connections. And if the food system starts building those connections and discovering the connections, this is where magic happens. So better to be at the creative phase of it rather than watching it from the far. With that, I will let the audience choose now, bites or bites, meaning lunch or questions. So are there any questions from the audience before we go to bites? Yeah.
I have actually a short question. In my opinion, our industry is not very collaborative, right? So it's not only that we have 35 different tools, right? But each of these 35 different tools stores data in different format, right? And so it's super, super hard, even for a farmer, let's say, work with different competitors and switch, but also like if we look at the whole stream of the supply chain, it's very hard to make sure that the data goes from one level to another. So how do you think this can be overcome? Like what can we do, and to make it a little bit more efficient as an industry together?
Yeah, I can take that. Maybe you could sort of chime in, right? So it's a great question, right? Couple of years ago, I ran a tech startup in the agri-tech space before, exactly the same problem, right? You've got companies like Leaf who came in and then built an API, because it's hard, like even in established companies, and we've been discussing this before, there are probably legacy systems that have been continued to build where the legacy systems internally also don't talk to each other. So it's not about you as an internal party not being able to talk to, let's say, Unilever system. It's the Unilever systems themselves can't talk to each other, right? That's the bigger challenge. Either. And there is so, I think the whole nature of being territorial about data is now crumbling, right? The big ones are saying, well, there is a lot of data, right? And there is a little bit of FOMO also. There is a lot of data. So I'll give you an example of, let's say, hypothetically, Unilever or Nestle. They sit on enormous amount of data that they don't want to share, right? And they say, okay, my data, I will run this, etc. But it's it's inert data, right? There is no cognition in that data. Now they are saying, okay, let me give parts of it to other people and let's see what they bring up with, right? So people are now opening up because they are saying, hey, well, the losses continue to rise. So their approach clearly is not working, right? Now, when it comes to external parties, right, and some of these companies, right, they are now saying essentially, and which is where AI can come in very, very interestingly, right? They are saying, okay, can you essentially create a connector which allows you to, in a very localized manner, only collect derivatives, so not take the data. So you can continue to keep that data, but you can still take derivatives and give outcomes like forecast better, or look at disease outcomes or early warning systems better, right? So I think that whole the whole logic that people had, okay, I'm not going to talk to your system, my system doesn't talk to my system. I think that is crumbling. So people are now finding ways and means to sort of solve it. Like for example, in some cases we would say, okay, don't do an API integration, right? But just give us CSV. 5 years ago, 3 years ago, people will not even give you CSV, right? Forget about API integration. So we've come far, right? I know it's a CSV far, but we've come far. I think it's going to take a couple of years, and everyone will start talking to each other, or legacy systems will crumble. But yeah, I'm sure you have an opinion as well.
No, I fully agree, and it's a great question. I think also the solution is to come to these sort of conferences, for the startups to meet to each other and talk to each other if they are willing to talk, because sometimes there's a big also ego, right, between founders saying no, this is my competitor, etc. But in a very efficient economy where the capital is being very efficiently allocated, these people would be teaming up to go see a client and say, this is the one and only solution, and this is the only version of the truth, right? Which is, I think, Tastewise has managed to do.
So I'll add to that also that I think that if a lot of resistance came from, again, very old-fashioned thinking, which is okay. It's intimidating to take a new system, and it's intimidating to see data that doesn't align sometimes also with what you thought is happening, and what does that make of your thoughts of your ideas. I think that two things that I'm seeing a very big shift of is, first of all, coming from very high levels. A lot of CEOs sort of looking now of where they're going to integrate these systems and sort of being very aware that the company, and by them, their job is to lead the company to the future. This is a must, and it's part of their responsibility and priority is how it's going to be done. So we no longer, for example, just, talk sometimes just with our users of the platform at the end, or the ones present, but we really reach high levels of people within the company that work together with us, that we showcase the capabilities that sort of gain that trust, I think, on the one hand. I think the second area where it comes also about is that, as we said before, speaking their language. When it's accessible or it's hard to sort of approach it, it really does create that gap and that sort of misunderstanding. And like you said, it's hours of investment. The more it's accessible, the more it speaks the language that you speak. And for that, it can be people that are, very high, data intelligent investigators, or, everyday people that are just answering. Once you're able and we're able to make our platforms a lot more accessible, make the data easy to use, so the Google for it, for example, that makes all the difference. So I think the charm falls in how you ease it through the system, as opposed to, sort of like coming and trying and fighting. And so having it top down and then bottoms up and meeting somewhere along the way.
So I'll try to wrap it up with the theme of intelligence, creating intelligence. As Nadim mentioned, comparing to other sectors, the level of intelligence of the food system is quite low. It's tenfold below the investment of other sectors. That is due to change. The other concept to your question is about using carbon trail and carbon flow as Bitcoin of food system, because if you can really map it, and if you can really represent it truly, you really understand the whole value chain. And therefore, I would be looking at the disruption of the companies who are trying to map and provide the data and get to the golden standard of data in carbon. That's the Bitcoin of food system, and this is where the disruption will happen. And the big companies are not necessarily not willing to share, they just don't know how to standardize and make sense out of it. So disruption has to come from the carbon coin, let's say, and standardized data formats. And some companies who will be faster bringing retailers and bigger companies on board, they will start building this future. That would be my humble view. And yeah, Nadim wants to share something.
Yeah, that's the perfect way on how to bring the whole industry together, because actually some companies are trying to trace that, but 80% of the carbon-3 emissions are at the farm level, and this is where these two companies can start collaborating and providing a holistic view.
Yeah. Carbon is the DNA. It's like in nature we have DNA. Carbon is the DNA of the food system. If you map it, you own it, you lead it for collective good. So let's build intelligence together and let's have some bites. Thank you to the
Amen.
panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.